Now it is my pleasure to hand it over to Ponder Stein, our moderator for this evening.
All right. Thanks very much, Ellie. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. It looks like we're slowly getting some people trickling in here. So I'll give it like a short, kind of slow, elongated intro. So this is our first session and hopefully a new series of events that we're planning on putting in cooperation with the CU College of Engineering and the alumni engagement team, as well as with the Gold Board. So let's go over what is the Gold Board. So the Gold Board is the graduates of the last decade board. It is an alumni board for the CU College of Engineering with some motivated alumni coming back to volunteer and help out with engagement with other alumni, putting on events for students, and also just keeping strong bonds between the alumni network from the CU Engineering as well as all of the alumni across the globe, really. So today we have some folks from the Gold Board, other CU alumni who are coming in from across the country, and we're going to go over a bunch of fun questions and answers and stories. I'm going to be monitoring the chats and the Q&A as they come in, so I'm going to try and not be too distracting as I'm looking over here on the side. But I'd love to kick it off with giving each of our panelists a chance to introduce themselves and go over a bit of their background and their experience. So I'm going to kind of give some ground rules on what the intro will look like, and I'll even go first, and then I'm going to pass it off to each of our three fantastic panelists. So for the intro, we're just going to go over our major, our degree program, kind of when we went to CU, maybe a little basic intro of our path from CU to what we're currently doing, our current role. And then also the kind of main question that we're going to kick things off with here is focusing on what the big kind of challenging transition has been since graduating CU and starting in a current role or getting to your current place. So let me go first. Like I said, my name is Ponder Stein. I graduated CU Engineering in 2022 from the aerospace engineering program with the bachelor's and master's. I work at Amazon as a software engineer on a program called Project Kuiper. So I write software to try and help antennas and satellites give internet service to people all across the globe. It's been a really good time the last 2 years since graduating CU, and I'm really excited to hear from all of these different panelists and everything that they have to say to all of us today. So I'm going to kick it off, go in alphabetical order. We'll start off with Andrew. Would you like to give us a little intro and talk about maybe a challenging transition that's happened so far in your career since graduating CU Engineering?
Yeah, thanks, Ponder. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Soy. I graduated from Aerospace Engineering Sciences in 2013, 2014 with the BSMS program. I did my master's in structural dynamics, and then straight out of the gate, I got my first job in my dream role, flight software. And when I was taking CSCI 1300 at the time, that was just like my weakest course. I found it to be extremely ironic that my first job was in software development when I had did a master's in something completely different. I did about some soul searching for 2 years. I said maybe day 700, I might fall in love with object-oriented programming. That day never came, but I was fortunate to join the Loads and Dynamics team on the Orion spacecraft. And that's where I felt like I really flourished. I was able to leverage my master's degree. But then I realized, being part of the problem, being the bearer of bad news, there was an opportunity for me to be a systems engineer to kind of understand the technical issues, but explain them in an easy to understand manner so that the program managers and technical risk and cost and schedule, that's a whole different element of challenges there. So that's what I do now. I'm a systems engineer. And so whenever you hear a systems engineer, it could mean a lot of different things. But for me, I just like to say I'm a glorified cat herder and translator. And so I'm at Blue Origin right now building sustainable lunar landers. And I couldn't be happier learning about all the different things there is about electrical power systems and thermal and fluid and propulsion. And so it's been a great journey in the last 10 years. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're super happy to have you. Thank you for that. Megan, would you like to kick us off next?
Yeah, I'm Megan Connard. I graduated with my degree in mechanical engineering in May of 2023. And I would say that my biggest transition so far, I've only been in my career for 10 months, so would just be starting. I'm a research engineer in carbon capture and like sustainable technologies. And it's mostly material science based and a lot of like chemical engineering. So I would say it's been a tough transition of like having a mechanical engineering background and only having taken one material science class to just jump headfirst into a role where most of my peers have their PhD, and I have very little experience.
Gotcha. Well, we're super happy to have you here. Thank you very much. And last and certainly not least, Rob, would you like to give us a little intro as well?
Sure. Good evening, CU. Very happy to connect with all of you. My name is Saurabh Sangai. I'm Director of Engineering at Treconomy. We are a supply chain and logistics technology company. I also lead our engineering from kind of the policy, decisions, and technical perspective. So I also function as the chief engineer for a lot of our strategic programs. I graduated out of CU with a master's and PhD. Part of my master's, I focused on embedded systems design, RF systems design. And then my PhD was mostly applied electromagnetics with antenna design for diverse military platforms and the integration and RF systems work that goes behind making a successful combat system. Over the years, I've functioned into multiple interdisciplinary roles, right from joining as a lead RF engineer, growing into product platform manager, eventually functioning as a director of engineering. And just like Andrew said, I also share the similar pedigree. It's at that point, once you go into maturity level where you see a lot more than just technical, it's the complex interplay and balance of, policies, decisions, communication, technical, all aspects. So very happy to be on this panel to connect with all of you. I welcome all the audience members and looking forward to a great session here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, as you can tell, we've got three fantastic CU alumni here on our panel. So let's kick it off and get right into some more discussions. So it sounds like a common theme that I'm kind of picking up on across really all of our stories, including mine, is kind of transitioning very early on from one thing, maybe what we majored in or studied, to our first role or maybe early on roles in our career. And this is actually a question that we got before the chat today from one of our attendees. What is some advice that you can give about transitioning careers or maybe trying to get into a role or a field where you don't have too much previous experience? This could be something like Megan said, studying mechanical and then going into more of a chemical or material space. Andrew and I both studied aerospace and then switched into software and coding pretty much right away. So I'd love to hear if anyone wants to kick that off first. Any advice for folks trying to, transition careers or move into a little bit of a different thing right away?
Yeah, I would say that it's important to remember that when you studied or are studying your 4-year plus degree at CU, your engineering degree is a problem-solving degree. And Megan, for example, studying mechanical engineering, that is an application of problem solving that she can still take the same recipe and apply it to material science. And it made me realize that, I had extreme imposter syndrome working with a bunch of software developers as a software developer, but I learned that, school, each class that you took was teaching you how to apply a very common problem solving method, whether that was aerodynamics or Calc 2 or, computer science. You're still applying the same practices. And so it's easy to discredit yourself, but it's also, it should be empowering to remember that, hey, I've done this before for 4 years in a very specific application, and now I can do that out in industry, whether it is or is within or outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I completely agree there. If I were to kind of provide an analogy here, I would say it's I think the career change and over time some shuffle and readjustment is inevitable. It's good to kind of acknowledge that change is the only constant. And as trends change, as market dynamics change, you would actually find some areas attractive, some areas upcoming. You positionally want to change, but then at the same time, your business might also have a requirement and they might motivate you for the change. So I recommend, change is nice. Take it as a spice of life, and it's kind of part of your growth curve. So embrace the change, and every time you actually embark on a change, what you can do is you can go back to your toolkit, you go look at the fundamentals, be it the knowledge you gained at CU or your previous experience. Always try to draw analogies, what worked, what didn't work, what are your core competencies, and how you can apply them in the new field. So try to do that mapping, have an understanding, talk to more people, and eventually you will figure out your way. And the sooner you accept that change, and even that, that notion of change, the better it is for accelerating your career. It's sometimes the change will be internally driven, sometimes the change will be driven by external factors out of your control. So, just be open-minded, go forward, explore and learn. As you learn, you're going to be, racking up your time in that field, in that new area. And who knows, in due time, you become the new expert over there.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would just like quickly add that for me, I reached out to the other people that I work with a lot. I mean, all my coworkers on my team have their PhD in chemical engineering or material science, and a lot of them taught classes. So I set up meetings with people and I was like, can you pull up the PowerPoints that you used to teach classes and just like teach me what you know? Like it's okay if not all of your time is value added. You learning the material is adding value because moving forward, you're then able to answer questions and actually help in projects. I felt a lot that when I started, I needed to know all the answers because a lot of the time in class, like you feel like you need to go in knowing, like it's like a test. Like you need to know all the answers, you need to be able to perform. But a lot of my first 10 months has just been learning how the company works and also just what material science is and all the different, technical aspects because I feel like I lacked that a lot.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like people are all kind of hitting on some of the same points. Things are always changing. Things are always kind of coming out with new technologies, and we're always learning whatever is next. So this is actually hitting a great segue into another question that we received before today. What are some ways on trying to find resources to learn more, whether that's before you're in a new role or once you've joined a company and there are some of those internally accessible resources that you have? What are some ways that have worked or maybe haven't worked for you on trying to get through that learning curve pretty quickly?
I would say for me, um, obviously what I said, just talking to people and asking them to teach me, and also watching. I've learned that for me, I need to hear it once, see it once, and then do it with someone else watching, before I'm really able to do something on my own. I'm in a lab a lot, so there are a lot of repetitive tasks and pieces of equipment that I don't really understand. Um, Also, the internet is obviously a great resource, and my notes from school have been really helpful. I took material science online, um, and I feel like I didn't retain a ton of information, but I do have really great notes, and I still have my textbook. So just being able to look things up, but especially just asking people to show me, and doing it myself with extra help. We also have standard operating procedures for most things within the company. So just reading through those before I try to use a piece of equipment.
Rob, Andrew, agree, disagree, want to fight?
Yeah, I think, one thing that helped me when I jumped into something completely unknown, always try to kind of go towards the fundamentals, fall back on your, investigative instincts and understand the thing first. There's an approach called the 5 whys approach, which is for everything you're doing as a fresher, as something you tried to do and construct and work and build for the first time, question the steps you're doing and question the answers you get to your questions, to almost to the point where it's about the peeling of onion to 5 layers deep. Like, if there's a particular system and a particular process, something's supposed to be working a specific way, question why, you'll get an answer, then question why to that answer. So once you start going deep, I think there's one point of assimilation where you start to know, okay, now I see the dots all connecting together. Now it's kind of makes sense. So there's something that you see on the surface, and then once you start going deep down, you see something subsurface. And I think the subsurface matter is the core of understanding. Once you get that, you kind of build your own understanding around this whole thing, and that really will help you go forward and attempt many more of these in any unknown scenario.
It looks like you're muted, Andrew.
Thanks. Wouldn't be the first.
It won't be the last. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I would just remind yourself that you're not the first person ever to start a job for the first time. And it might feel kind of daunting. Like, when I was in high school fighting Nemo, when the fish were just fighting to get out of that tank, and then they roll out into the ocean in the bags, and like the puffer fish is like, now what? I don't know where I was going with that, but what I was trying to say is, one of the best things you could do when you join your company is build your neural network. So understand who the people are on your team or outside your team, and when you meet them, kind of think about it as a speed dating aspect where you can say, hey, if I ever have specific questions about this, I can talk to Saurabh about that. He is a resource I can leverage. And eventually, after some time, when you are in certain meetings and someone asks about something, whether you're asked that question directly or someone else who know who your resources are, and I think that's a huge lifting of the weight off your shoulders, because you might feel like, oh, I need to know everything. But the truth is like, that's why you're on a team to like Avengers Assemble, so that you can know who to ask and who to leverage help with. I think another thing too is like, when I was giving my quick bio, like I was in software for 2 years, and I was like really hoping that I would fall in love with it, but it didn't happen. But I don't regret that time. And then I did loads and dynamics, vibration and shock for another 4 or 5 years, and it wasn't until then when it like clicked, and I was like, this is what I love. So yeah, like it's one thing to study for 4+ years a degree that you there was a reason why you chose that degree. But when you go out into industry, you kind of have to like re-baseline and figure out what are my skills, what are my gifts, and how do I share it with the world? And it's very like introspective, but it takes time for you to realize like, hey, this is my jam. This is what I can really contribute. I really like leading people, or I don't, or I like putting my head down and working on coding or a model for 8 hours straight, or I just want to sit in meetings all day and face to face with people. And so it just takes a while for you to find like what gives you energy, and it'll just take time. So just be patient, I would say. It's like you didn't take small bites, take small steps at a time, and then you'll get there.
Awesome. This is great. I feel like I'm learning so much from y'all already, and I already know all y'all. This is awesome. So we have our first live question from one of the attendees, and I'm going to drop that in the Q&A. So this is also something that we discussed, and I'm going to shift this towards Saurabh specifically. But as an international student looking at trying to get jobs in engineering, whether it's aerospace specifically or just engineering jobs in general in the US, what does that look like for someone who is an international student? And then I have some follow-up questions for Megan and Andrew that are a little bit different.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the questions. Great question. So typically the way I see it, when you do a particular degree, always keep an eye on, your educational assets, your degree, the elements of your degree, and their mapping into the market. Like if I had the same problem or the same challenge about a decade ago. I did, out of passion, I did both master's PhD in RF. It used to be and continues to be a highly, highly niche, highly advanced and sensitive field to be. But sometimes you definitely nurture your passion, and then you find out and figure out ways. So the best thing that worked for me is this exact item, the educational and informational assets mapped into the market. And when I say that, I'll explain what I mean. It's what is the market looking for today, and what fundamentals in your knowledge base actually fit that market requirement. So for me, if I just look at RF, a decade ago, everything wanted to go wireless. Everything wanted to go small. And so what I did as part of my PhD thesis had nothing to do with what I do today. The fundamentals stay the same, and I apply them every day, day in, day out. But my thesis work was on defense systems, combat systems, antenna RF design for specific warfighter systems. But the fundamentals were about miniaturization and electric field and radio propagation and so on. And that really applied well into in my case, custom super miniaturized product design, and then eventually today where it brought me to Traconomy, where we do extremely harsh operating environments, very miniaturized sensors, wireless devices, and so on. So now take that, let's shift the environment to aerospace, right? If I see the commercial market demand today, I feel there's a lot of buzz, a lot of sentiment going on for drones. There's a lot of sentiment going on in terms of, just, remote sensing and some other areas. As far as possible, find and identify commercially motivated areas for your field, even though your field might be super niche, and then see how you can map and fit into that current ongoing, requirement set. So, going back to you, Ponder, and going back to you, Andrew, I think aerospace is such a dynamic, such a cutting edge field today. But if we look at what happened in the last 5 years or a decade, we saw democratization of aerospace. The whole sector has opened up, primarily being from a government driven entity. Now we have a lot of private sector participation and regular companies either working on subsystems or full missions. And I think that's the benefit of this trend going on, and that's where I would try to be if I were an international student doing aerospace right now. I would map myself to the current commercial activity, see how I fit there, and of course it's much intricate than that. I make it sound easy, but as you go in that line of thought, you will kind of explore and start opening one gate after the other. There'll be, there's a legal front, and there's kind of multiple other fronts. We're not experts, but what we can do is we can try, we can understand and push the frontier, and somewhere you'll find the product market fit that actually is very conducive to your profile, and that's how you get your foot in the door. So that would be my advice. Like, look at the current commercial activity, and then see how your skills map to that ongoing requirement.
So it sounds like a lot of kind of being intentional about what you're trying to learn, and how will that apply, or how can you use that and map to things that you think will be coming up in the future?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. Andrew and Megan, anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because if you think about the show Shark Tank, right, the entrepreneurs go up and they ask for venture capital, and the sharks are always asking, like, how did you start this company? And it always starts off with someone saying, like, I found a problem and I thought of a solution. And I was just thinking, like, in my day-to-day now, as a systems engineer, sometimes I feel like a firefighter, like I'm just reacting and putting out fires, but I really like Saurabh's advice, which is like, be proactive and think about where the market may go, so that you can be more of a visionary and kind of see the forest for the trees. And then, your problem solving skills, your engineering degree is the bridge that will let you get there. So now, I mean, I don't know. I think that's really great advice that even I could take away, or anyone else could take away from it. It's just a good reminder about why some of us might have chosen engineering is because we want to go and find and solve problems. And solving physics isn't going to change, but the problems that we can use physics and engineering to solve do. And so that's how we can be more agile. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
All right. Well, let's transition a little bit into like how to look for those jobs in the first place and transitioning into that first kind of role. We've talked about being intentional and looking at like where the market or industry could be heading and trying to set yourself up well and learn things to even, pivot into a new career field. But I'm interested if anyone has any advice or thoughts on trying to get a role, whether it's something that you think you might be interested in, something that you're not sure if you would be interested in or not. How do you kind of try and narrow down all of the job opportunities that are out there to meet some specific requirements that you may set for yourself? So specifically, we got a question about trying to find an aerospace job in Colorado. Andrew, I think you may have some experience with that, but also just trying to find a job, in a different part of the country like Megan did. I'd be super curious to hear about any experiences that y'all want to share about that.
So Colorado has a lot of aerospace companies, a lot of prime contractors like the Lockheed Martins and the Raytheons. They call them primes because they support predominantly government work, NASA, DoD, but there's also commercial and civil space. I actually spent most of my career at Lockheed Martin in the Littleton area, and it's kind of interesting. So I grew up in the Littleton area, and it was actually a field trip during AP Physics when we got to tour the Orion capsule. And that was when I learned about what Orion is. And long story short, that was where my first job offer was. And Apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. But the comforting part knowing is that I got a sense that if company X didn't work out for whatever reason, if I wanted to pursue another opportunity, there were other opportunities locally that I wouldn't need to move. And as a result, a lot of my friends, either from school or friends that I networked with, you kind of keep in touch and you learn more about like what all the cultures are doing and stuff. And so there's a lot of opportunities in the Denver metro area, but there's also opportunities in the Boulder, Longmont, Broomfield area as well. So I've stayed local to the Denver metro area, partially because my family's here, but also there's a lot of opportunities. So, and now with how reusable rockets have revolutionized the industry, now, like when I graduated, I thought the primes were the way to go, but now you have like startup companies like Rocket Lab. They're not startups anymore, but Redwire, and those are just examples of small companies that would not have really, in my opinion, have existed or have had as large of a footprint, but because of reusable or more affordable access to space, it kind of like what Saurabh said, it just changed the whole market. So there's a lot of opportunities in Colorado, but also in the Pacific Northwest and obviously California. That's kind of how the aerospace industry has taken off, literally, that I can think of.
Yeah, we love a good aerospace pun there, huh?
I actually want to add one thing I remembered from my days back when I was in this same scenario, right? What I did, I wanted to explore what the Colorado market has to offer. And the way I started, I picked a company and I started to map its customer-vendor relationships. So going both sides, a few layers. And once you do that enough number of times, I started with maybe like 4 or 5 companies that I knew through our lab interaction and so on. And in about 2 weeks, I had a list of about like close to 140, 150 companies just within Colorado. everything from like a 4 employee company to about few thousand employees company. And I had found and discovered them just by, going both ways, exploring their vendor customer relationships. And there are ways to do that. You can do kind of, a little bit on the web. You can do a little bit by, looking at press releases, which company did what business with whom, and so on. But once I did that, I felt very comfortable that, now, hey, I know at least 150 companies where I can apply to when I graduate. And that kind of exercise worked really well for me.
Yeah, so what Ponder was talking about is I live in New England, and I kind of did my job search very last second, changed locations. And for me, when I was looking for positions, the biggest thing was reaching out to people. I had somewhat of a network, but not a ton in New England. So once I found companies or jobs I was interested in, I looked for CU alumni at the company through LinkedIn that were just, that worked at the company, and reached out to them and said, hey, I just like want to learn about what you do, because I think it's really hard to find out what people do at engineering companies without talking to someone. And so I reached out and was just like, could you like, maybe spend 10 minutes like answering some of my questions, like either via chat or like online. And if I was interested in the company, I've made that connection. And they've met me too. And a lot of the time they kind of offered, we have like openings, or kind of made that connection, which was really awesome. I found that to be true within my company too. If I'm interested in someone else, I just need to reach out to someone in that position and just ask them about what they do to learn more about different positions.
Awesome. Great answers. Thanks, everyone. So it sounds like there's a ton of opportunities out there. How did you try and find out like what to prioritize in finding one of those initial jobs out of college? So, if you don't have a ton of experience working as a professional engineer, it's hard to know whether we want to work at a company with 4 employees versus a company with 40,000 employees, right? Whether we want to work in Colorado versus go to somewhere else, whether we want to, try and just get our foot in the door somewhere, or whether we want to wait around to try and get our dream job. So what kind of helped each of you figure out what those things were that you wanted to prioritize, especially on those kind of first or early on careers out of school?
So for me, I think the big thing was I was really interested in location. Obviously, I was looking for a very specific location. And I think it's difficult to narrow down your choices by location and like your dream job, and
Mm.
exactly what you're doing. If you're more open to moving, you have a lot more options. And so I still really don't know what I want to do, and so I'm interested to hear other people's responses. But the mindset that I had was find a job that I don't mind doing every day, and within that job, seek out tasks that are meaningful to me. So even if it's not my dream job, find projects and jump on those projects that are more closely aligned with, a dream job or something that I'm more interested in doing. I definitely didn't see myself in a materials science role straight out of college, um, but I was always really interested in sustainability and energy, and have been able to align what I've been working on with those things. So just finding those projects and asking to work on them and learn more about them has really helped me.
Yeah, so for me, the way it went, I kind of saw, my core competencies, the top three. So if I put that, I would be saying, at that point in time, it was antenna design, RF systems design. That was number one. Second one was embedded systems design. And third one really was kind of, the first principles approach, problem solving, and so on. So what I wanted to do was make sure wherever I go, whatever job I land, I at least exercise, these three core competencies to some extent. And so I was clear I wanted to start off with the core electromagnetics design position, but then I also wanted something on the side for learning. And so, I started looking, and eventually I stumbled across, it's a company called Blue Flux. They're a custom RF design firm. And so the mapping for me was it gets me my core competencies. And it so was that they were also a certified lab, allowed to certify wireless devices. And that was the learning part for me. So it kind of, aligned very well. And at that point, I was clear, I have to go do it. There were some other jobs, some other offers where it was, pure play antenna design or pure play like RF simulations. But then that was it. Like that was the sole function. And so I always wanted to make sure I keep growing the portfolio. So I chose something that allowed me to grow as well.
Yeah, I would say, I was thinking, listening to other people's responses at my current company at Blue Origin, we took this test called the Working Geniuses. And it's like the Enneagram, it's like Myers-Briggs, but the Working Genius basically says that there are these 6 skills that everyone has. It's not about if you're good at them or if you're weak at them. It's what to give you energy, what to you're neutral to, and what to just naturally drain you. And you might find that like a skill that you're really good at drains you, but you're good at it because of your training or if it's just how your brain is wired, but it just doesn't bring you joy. It's kind of like Marie Kondo, like it doesn't bring me joy. So I would encourage you to find what skills bring you energy and motivate you, and then naturally you can kind of see how in this example it doesn't pertain to an application. It's just the skills are wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. And it's all about, in that order, it's all about like conceptualizing, like, oh, I wonder if there's a better way we can do something. And then tenacity is kind of like, I just want to sling code and just debug and get it done. And there's no right or wrong. It's not about what your skills are. It's just identifying like what brings you a lot of fulfillment and energy. And at the same time, what made it good was you can identify disconnects with another team member where if they feel really passionate about something that just drains you, you know that you can kind of like delegate to them. You can, hey, can you help me with this? I would just encourage folks to think like that. I'm not trying to endorse that working or genius of wonder or working geniuses exam, but it just opened my eyes to make me realize that like we inherently will want to gravitate towards some part of the project life cycle. And it's a good way to kind of view how to put your commit to things that are most interesting, but also what you will naturally be investing in and good at and energetic at. So I don't know if that helps, but that was something that just came to mind.
Awesome. This is great. We're getting like different takes that kind of feed together on all of these. I'm having a lot of ideas over here. This kind of leads into another question that we got before the panel started today. What's been a big success factor that has helped you, especially early on in transitioning to that first role or early roles out of college? Was there something that maybe you thought would be true that wasn't, a belief that you thought that you held that turned out to be untrue, or something that you stumbled upon that happened to be like the silver bullet or a magic ticket to improve your success and be a little bit higher quality of an engineer early into the career?
So I think I'll quickly take a short one here. One success factor I discovered was always be respectful, always be reasonable, and never shy away from giving your professional opinion. There were quite a few instances where I was the fresher in the room. There's the whole room of experts, and there was a certain notion going on in the room. and I happened to not believe in it. And so I did actually voice kind of concern, and again, be respectful, always kind of maintain the decorum, and everybody has a point of view, everybody has a perspective, but if you feel strongly about something, and if you have either training or if you understand the logic or the fundamentals to explain it, don't feel shy. Go ahead and just explain and elaborate. I did the same. I was kind of a bit on the fence because it was the first experience for me. But once I did it, and the gracious way I did it, then I got a lot of positive feedback, and eventually, actually, people started to look up to that kind of like critique and feedback, and I think that was a good success factor. So when you go in that professional environment, it's not about it's never about, like, especially in the real world, when you go to a job, you'll very quickly find out it's not about doing the most complex things in the most amazing ways. Maybe once in a blue moon, yes, but most of the times it's about doing simple things in an effective way and getting it done. And that's, I think, where we have to keep kind of the good rapport about that, and make sure you approach it a certain way, you value your own kind of orientation, findings, and understandings, but then also disseminate them through the group in a respectful way. So I would say that was the biggest one for me.
I would say I have two things. The first one is that I also have trouble sometimes not being the most knowledgeable in a subject and feeling like I can't speak up. Especially as a woman in engineering, oftentimes I am the minority in the room. But one thing I think I kind of learned in my career and also in undergrad is that oftentimes if you think you have a good idea, just be loud. Like, just say it very loudly, because people listen to the loudest person in the room, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Oftentimes, if you're quiet, people aren't listening to you, even if you have really good ideas. And so sometimes you just need to speak up and be loud and share your idea, even if it's a bad one. Just because you want to be heard, and it's important to like get your voice out there. The second thing is that people don't know what they don't know. Oftentimes I would go into meetings or presentations, and I was very nervous that people are going to ask me questions about things I don't know, and I was going to look silly. But most of the time, it's my project. I know the most about the project that I'm working on. And people, if you mess up, it's okay. If you make a mistake, other people don't know what you're talking about. So, that kind of took a little bit of the weight off my back. I don't know if those are silly answers, but they've helped me a lot. So,
Awesome. Andrew, agree, disagree, want to argue?
I was responding to the question, so I was multitasking.
No worries. We all love a good multitasking. So I guess kind of a follow on this is now that you've had a little bit of experience, everyone has like a varying level of experience here. What are some things that a new engineer joining your team, what are some things that you would want to see from them that other folks can maybe try and emulate in their, early on careers or when they're joining new teams? What are some of those expectations that you now kind of see from the other side when someone new is joining?
So I would say, when somebody is joining new, it's very important to, especially when you come from an academic environment into a work environment. In the first few weeks, it's all about understanding the ecosystem. You came out of a system, you're habituated to a specific way of working. And very quickly, the first things maybe you should do is understand your new ecosystem, the tools, the means of communication, the approaches to different things at work, the resources available, also the structure at work. You know, your team, other teams, management, you know, ways to approach different things. Technical things would be handled a little bit differently than non-technical, interpersonal people things. And so all of that, it's just basically immerse yourself in a complete situational awareness about your office and probe into different areas, learn as much as you can, network with people, and you know, and it's goes both ways. You know, you do the full pyramid, you go do the who's who of your company, but you also do, you know, go down to the humble workers, people who all kind of they're doing their limited role, but they matter a lot in the big scheme of things, and try to connect to everybody across the chain. And you know, then there's the you know, besides the people aspect, there's also understanding the culture and the legacy of the company. That's an important thing, because it's almost like you came out of a house and now you're going to a new house and you want to make a home out of that house. And so these are the different elements that will kind of be part of your journey to go make that happen. So, you know, the fundamentals of it comes down to just situational awareness, and you know, learn and adjust and adapt and kind of quickly gear yourself to the new kind of style of working.
I remember asking my boss after I felt comfortable, I was like, what made you hire me? And they said, I asked myself if I could hang out with you for 40 hours a week. He then expanded that, you know, at the big company that I was at that had a good relationship with the university, it was basically saying like, hey, everyone who we interview, we have some type of understanding that they meet the cut technically. I think what my manager at the time was saying, he was like, I just wanted to see if we were compatible in the sense that we could problem solve together. And what it made me realize was my manager wasn't, and I still struggle with this, but my manager isn't like someone literally higher up than me. They're a peer, and they're a manager is someone who has been formally trained on how to lead conflict resolution and maybe performance reviews, but also they have a different, they've been given another toolbox on how to lead a team. And I would say it's not an expectation, but it's an advice. It's just remember that your peers include your managers. Your managers aren't someone who you need to say yes or no to, or maybe that, depending on your setting. But for the longest time, I thought that my managers were, it was difficult for me to approach them with my insecurities. Well, I'll never forget Professor Axelrod going to her office hours, and she was like, hey, just talk to me about what you're struggling with. And I would just be open and vulnerable. And I'm like, I get confused on step 2. I have no idea. Your manager could do the same thing too. It doesn't even need to be your manager. It could be your senior manager. Like in the end, everyone wants you to succeed because they want everyone to succeed. And it's not just about the company or the project that you're at. And I think it should be a common theme of wherever role you apply for and you join. And I guess a side note is when you interview for roles, make sure you look for, it's a two-way interview. Make sure you look for the role that has the right support staff, because that's the ingredients for success. So yeah, I mean, if you're joining a new team, just remember that, you know, of course it takes time to build trust. And I'm not saying on the first day when you meet your manager, just say, I suck at coding. I didn't want to say that in my software team, but you can kind of get a sense of like over time, just try to be vulnerable, because I think everyone is human, and it shines a special light on you know, making that experience unique and special.
I think that's really interesting to what you said about like the reason that they hired you is not exactly what many candidates think they're being evaluated on in the interview. Like looking at how interviews work from the inside, it's very different than what I thought in college. So I don't know, kind of just being a nice dude, being someone that you would want to work with. It goes pretty far in life. I'm not gonna argue with that at all. So yeah.
Yeah, and to that point, I think it's like it's talking about the importance of being your genuine self. And if they were ever in a situation where you were they didn't proceed with the interview or they did not extend an offer, you could also look at it as their loss too. It's not always like I wasn't a good fit. It wasn't just generally a good fit, and that's okay.
Megan, anything to add? Agree, disagree?
No, I'm just learning. I don't even know. I'm too early in my career to have an answer to this question.
Totally fair. So we're kind of getting up towards the end of our time here, unfortunately. So I'm going to pick up a last kind of question before we wrap it up and thank all of the fantastic people who have been here putting this on. So kind of a last little question that I'd love everyone to go through is what was one kind of something that you had to learn the hard way, a hard lesson learned in your transition, maybe from school to early in your career, something that has stuck with you that you kind of had to make a mistake and mess up on before you could learn it?
Okay, I guess I'll take that.
Okay,
I
don't all
messed up
jump in at once.
I messed up quite a bit, so I feel good to answer this one. So I think there's two fronts where I at least I had this happen to me. One is the technical front. There were quite a few things that happen over time as you go into more complex things. You start working on more expensive stuff, and eventually you're an engineer and things can happen. And so as part of one of these things, I actually damaged slash completely kind of ruined piece of equipment that was too expensive. And that was a good learning for me, to and I think that was where we were pushing the boundaries of trying something that wasn't the expected outcome, but we did get to that outcome. And so, the management and kind of the processes after to handle that kind of an undesired outcome, I think that was the interesting part for me. And then learning how it could be avoided in the future through all the debriefs and all the stuff that happened. So that was one area that was a good learning for me, and definitely now that I look at it, and even look at the size of projects I'm working on today as opposed to 10 years ago, I think now it's just a small blip in the axis of time, and it's the scale today seems like nothing, but when it happened to me on that day, I was a bit overwhelmed. I think my recommendation for something like that is to just be open, share what has happened with your colleagues and with your managerial chain, and there are things that will happen. Don't worry about it too much, but just kind of find a way to address them and fix them for the future. So that's the technical aspect. I think from a non-technical aspect, in your career, very soon you'll learn. There is a time, there is a changeover, like a turning point in career where it's not about the activity you do, but it's about the outcomes. And if you're approaching that point, you're very soon approaching leadership. So in that case, you have your tunnel vision, and then you have your peripheral vision. And I think your tunnel vision gets you going, but you over time have to develop your peripheral vision, understand things that you don't see, and start to kind of take care of them and consider them. That's kind of the growth. That was one non-technical people involvement related kind of learning for me. Initially went bad, I was learning out of it and then fixed it and grew much stronger out of it.
Awesome. Megan, Andrew?
I can go, Megan, if you want. I remember asking a supervisor, like, what was the last, like, if you had any positive, constructive criticism, what would you say? And he was like, there was this one situation where you had all the data, but you had analysis paralysis, and my lack of action created more confusion. And this was, I think, when I was like 6 months, a year into this role. And in the context, I wanted to make sure I had enough data to make the right decision. But the feedback I got was the answer was right in front of you. You may have been the person with the least amount of experience, but you are, and you were or are, the smartest person in the room about that topic. So when everyone is looking to you, in the end, it made me learn that I should feel empowered to say the data that I collected, the conclusion that I came up with, but still be open to, it might not be the right answer. And that's partially why lesson learned is I think out loud a lot in meetings. I just kind of, I say I'm a glorified cat herder and translator. What that really means in corporate lingo is I'm a facilitator and a translator. Like I get all the subject matter experts in the room and I say the sky's green, and someone's like, no, it's blue because of the light refraction, and then eventually I collect the data and I was like, oh, so would you say that we should do this? And everyone's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So when you facilitate discussion, it allows you to like have a back and forth conversation to make an engineering decision based off of data with everyone on board, as opposed to you just kind of, or me, having my notebook and just thinking by myself. And that allowed me to kind of open myself up to the room. And I thought that was good feedback. That was the big, I wouldn't say that was a mistake, but that was like something that prompted me to learn better from. And I would argue it was a great, I'm really happy that happened.
Okay, so I have an answer. I would say, every few months I go to a location at my job and we do what's called a Kaizen. So we spend a week working on a project that they gave us. It's a bunch of minds coming together from all around the country. And we work on a project and we only have a week. It's very quick. We spend Monday learning about the project, Friday presenting about the project. So you really only have 3 days to come up with a solution. And I took this very seriously in that I wanted to have a really good result and forgot that a lot of what I'm doing is a learning process. And just got very overwhelmed in like, we have to get this done now, and forgot that I also need to like learn in the process and not just create a product. And I got so overwhelmed that I just like in the middle of the team project started crying. And if you know me, I just cry a lot. It's okay. But I was just very overwhelmed and I had taken this very seriously. And I think I learned from that it's important to take a step back and like not take everything so seriously and feel like it has to happen now, even if there is a deadline. Because especially, I think, well, I don't know, I guess past this, I don't know, but early in your career, it's really important to just learn and take like the projects and opportunities you're doing as a learning experience and really enjoy them for what they are, and not just feel like you have to deliver results and act like a robot.
Awesome. We got Andrew dropping some knowledge bombs in the chat there. Well, this has been such a fantastic panel. We're unfortunately at the end of our time here, but I've been looking forward to this, and this has absolutely lived up to all of my expectations. I'd really like to offer a very sincere thank you to all of our panelists, Andrew, Megan, and Saurabh. I am happy to work with all of them on the Gold Board, and it's been great to learn even more about each of them and their experiences today. Thank you to everyone who was able to attend and has given us some of these great questions that we were able to answer and provide some feedback on. And most importantly, I'd like to sincerely thank the CU Engineering Alumni Engagement Team. Ellie and Aaron, who are on the call, have really been working hard to set up this webinar and doing everything behind the scenes. And we absolutely couldn't have put this on without them.